Welcome to the Maverick Paradox Podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. But today, our guest is William Buist, who is a mentor to business owners. Hi, William.
Morning, Judith. How are you?
I am very good, thank you.
Good.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, where do you want me to start? I mean, I can go back quite a long way, but I had a career in the insurance industry and ended up in that role with Lloyd's TSB Insurance in Newport in South Wales, where I was running some fairly big projects with a risk management hat on. I say fairly big. I mean, we had a project team of 70 odd people. Wow. And what I became known for there was being able to bring a team of people together very quickly and get them focused on what they needed to be doing and why it was important, and all aligned behind the project goal. To the end that we, would often deliver projects ahead of time and under budget, which was a little bit unusual. And I've taken that skill, that stuff that I learned there about collaboration and how to build collaborative teams, and now mentor business owners to help them build the team they want around them to work in the way that they want it to work, to deliver the business that they want to deliver. And that's how I got to it, really.
Interesting. I noticed that when people talk about your business, they say one of the good things that you're good at doing is unlocking sustainable profits to avoid costly mistakes. Can you tell me, one, how did you come up with that? And two, what do you do to make that happen?
Do you mean how did I come up with it as an expression of what I do?
Yeah.
I think it's mostly that came about because I was asking clients what it was that they'd bought from me rather than what it was that I'd sold to them. Because quite often those are two different things. I think, as a business owner, I have a fairly clear idea what I do, but that's not necessarily what people perceive or see when it's done to them. Those words, sustainable profits and avoiding costly mistakes, were words that kept being played back to me. And it made sense to me then to start using those words because they were my clients' words rather than the rather more mundane language that I'd used beforehand about mentoring and coaching and helping people and all of these things. So what does it actually mean? Well, there's some, to break it down a little bit and unpack it. Sustainable is a really important word, and it's often people hear that and think about, green initiatives and doing things from a sustainable point of view. And that's really important to me, but it's not quite what I mean in this sense. I'm talking about sustainable profits in the sense of designing the business so that its profits are reliable and repeatable and long-term, so that there's a process within the business that people follow that delivers those profits year in, year out, that they can then rely on them. And that comes about by making sure that the sorts of mistakes that people make regularly because they have not enough experience or the wrong skills get ironed out of the process, so that they avoid those costly mistakes. And that's why the two things are together. It's not unlock sustainable profits, or we can do that this week, and next week we'll go and avoid some costly mistakes. These two things are actually really one, the two sides of the same coin. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and I like it because sustainable is one of the things I talk about a lot when I do Maverick Leadership. And I've noticed that a lot of conformists, they do things and they get very excited when it's done and it's achieved, but you can't continue it. So they'll do everything, so that the end justifies the means, but you can't carry on like that. And I find that very irritating.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, I think it is part of the whole leadership spectrum, but I think, you get sustainable profits when the leaders of a business are being consistent in the way they communicate what you're trying to do, adaptive to what happens in the world, because nothing's static. The world changes around you. And, if your competitors see you outperforming them, they will do one of two things. They'll either try to undermine you or they will try to outperform you. So that, they're either trying to go above you or below you, but they're never trying to do what you do exactly because they don't know what you're doing exactly. And that's also part of the leadership spectrum, I think, is making sure that you are communicating things to your team in a way that enables them to do things dramatically differently from the people in the market around you so that you stand out. And that often, for the people I work with, many of whom I think have the sort of, maverick traits that you enjoy, and you know some of them, so that's that's true for some of them. That kind of appeals to their desire to be different. They want to be standing out from the crowd, but they want to be standing out from the crowd in a way that isn't easy to copy because it's about the message and the personality of that message, not their personality, but the way that pervades the organization. And that makes it really difficult to copy.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think it's courageous as well. And I think that's one of the big differences is that Mavericks will stand out, will be different, but they will empower other people to lead and try and train other people to do something similar, but with their own twist. And they don't see that as giving up power to their detriment.
No, I think you're right. I think it's about, it's actually, this whole thing about empowerment, it's an interesting word in its own sense. I'm not sure that you can empower other people. I think you can create the environment in which they can empower themselves, which is slightly different. And I also think that there's a whole piece that goes on now. If you look at what all the consultants are busy saying it's all about engagement. Well,
yeah, but no one knows what it means. That's what really annoying.
Well, yeah, exactly. What does that actually look like? And for me, what that looks like, and it's one of the things back in the Lloyd's TSB days, how did we get the project teams to be self-sustaining and be able to look after themselves? We swiped away the middle management layer because everybody knew exactly what they were doing and what they were entitled to do and how they could go about it. And nobody was judging the way they chose to do it. The focus was on what they achieved, not on the method of its achievement.
Yes. And I think, I don't know if you see it a lot when you're out networking, but there are a lot of consultants that all use the same buzzwords. And when you dig deep, they can't tell you what it is that they do. And so they'll say, we work with disinfected workforces or people who just aren't empowered anymore. And you say, well, what does it mean? And they just repeat the same words. It's like somebody came out with the idea and was really good at explaining it, and they really did it. And everyone said, "Oh, you can make money in that area." So now everyone does it. So now the word does. It's like this authentic leadership. What does that mean now?
Yeah, I know what the words mean, but that doesn't mean anything in its own. Just taking the lexicography meaning doesn't give you any information at all, does it?
I must admit, if another coach tells me they unlock someone's potential, I think I'll go cross-eyed. Because it no longer means anything now, does it?
The whole unlocking thing reminds me of a Billy Connolly line, which is, life's like a tin of sardines. We're all jammed in together and no one can find the key. I think there's a lot of truth in that. The whole buzzword thing, it's one of the things I talk about a lot is having clarity, and
yes,
being really clear on what it is you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and so on and so on. And I think there's a real challenge with using buzzwords that a jargon that it just isn't clear, and it means something in a particular environment. If I talk to you about things like IBNR, you wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. If I did that with an insurance audience, they would know exactly what I meant. It stands for incurred but not reported. It's claims that have happened but haven't yet been paid for. Mm-hmm. And in any other audience, those kinds of acronyms and things are just a way of creating confusion, not clarity. And I think one of the things that great leaders do, and particularly those that have got a message that's a bit off the wall, is they take time to think about, how do I make this message clear? How do I get rid of the jargon? How do I get it into ever plainer English? And, social media is blamed for a lot, but I think Twitter's been really good at helping those people who've really engaged with it to think about, how do you get your message down into, well, it used to be 140 characters and it's now 280, and I think it's got worse because of it.
Is it just because people like hearing themselves speak?
No, I'm not sure it's that. I mean, I think there's an element of that, sure. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think it's because they want to be seen to be knowledgeable, to have the right knowledge for the job that they're doing. And for often in a big organizational environment, having the right job, means knowing the language to use and talking the language of the people around you. But people are doing it without ever understanding what it means. It's a buzzword, and so they use it because they think they need to. But the people around them are using it because they think they need to, and the people around them are using it because they think they need to. And somewhere down the track, there was somebody who came up with a buzzword who knows what it means, but nobody is left that does.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I read this week, and unfortunately I can't remember which company it was. I remember it's a large company, and they had a 10-page dress code, and then they got a new female CEO, and she took the dress code, 10 pages, rubbed it out, and then she just said, the new dress code is dress appropriately. And everybody said, that's never going to work, because we tried that. And then she said, no, that's the new dress code. And then when people started to say, oh, so-and-so's doing that, she just said, just dress appropriately. And then they managed to figure it, once they realised they had to figure it out, they just figured it out, and it was fine. And it just made me laugh because, a 10-page dress code. I mean, how did you get to the 10-page dress code anyway?
Yeah, it's a really good example. And actually, it touches on something we talked about earlier, that this is about clarity and empowerment, and it's putting the decision on what to wear back with the individual who's putting his clothes on in the morning, rather than with an HR department that's designed a 10-page policy. And you've got to, thinking about those kinds of, what makes it work and what makes it not work, is quite interesting, really. I just think people, if they're free to make up their own minds, they start asking questions of themselves about, what does reasonable mean? Well, I think a t-shirt and shorts is reasonable because it's really hot today. But when I go in like that, everybody pokes fun at me. So maybe that isn't reasonable. Maybe I need to put, at least a decent pair of jeans on and a shirt with a collar. And now everybody treats me like normal. So I now know what reasonable is in their minds. And that's empowerment, is giving people the freedom to choose themselves and to make the right decisions by creating the environment.
That's true. One of the things that I've watched over the years in fascination, watching you do the stuff that you do, is that in the realm of your work, you're quite mavericky. You're quite different in the way that you perceive how things should be done and how they should be implemented. Do you feel that's ever caused you any problems, or?
It only caused me a problem when I worried about it.
Interesting. Tell me more.
So I think, I think there is always a tendency, certainly as children, a lot of parents, and mine included, bless them, will guide you down a path that is really about conformity and acceptance. And, if you do something a bit out of the ordinary, certainly, my parents would question why I was doing it and make me think one way or another that it probably wasn't a good thing to do. And, that kind of gets embedded. So years later, when I'm approaching running a business in a way that is a little bit different, and I recognise now that it is quite different from many others, that I start questioning whether that's the right thing to do, because people are saying, oh, that's a bit odd. Why are you doing that? And so there's this inbuilt feeling that has come from my history that says, if people are asking me that question, it must be wrong, rather than if people are asking me that question, it must need exploring. to a different conclusion. And I think, gradually I became comfortable that I don't need to be a business that works with everybody. I don't need to be a business that works with people who don't like the way that I work. I don't need to change the way that I work to make it likable for them, because then I won't be authentic. There are some people for whom the way I work, they will say, this doesn't work for me. And that's fine. I'm really comfortable with it now. And in fact, if I'm not feeling that some of the people I talk to get that sense of we're not right, we shouldn't work together because the chemistry is not right, then actually I start to worry that I'm not standing out and being different enough. That I need that kind of feedback too. And as a result, when the chemistry is right, then we're much more aligned. I'm doing what I do the way that I love to do it, and the people that I'm doing it with are receiving, a service that they love to receive. And what could be better than that?
Yeah, I think that's good. There's this thing that you used to say, and unfortunately I can't remember it all, but I'm sure you will, so you can explain it. There was something that you used to say, something along the lines of, what would make you think that way for it to be true or something? Can you explain? Do you know what I'm talking about? And if so, can you explain
I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. The phrase you're desperately searching for is what would have to be true for that to be a reasonable thing to say or to do or for a reasonable outcome. And it really boils down to whenever I see something that is very odd, it usually means that I am missing some information rather than the other person is acting oddly. Uh-huh. So the question is about what is it that I don't know that they do? Let's take, for example, we're in the middle of a Brexit process, and there's lots of things where, there are two sides in that Brexit argument. I'm not going to go into the politics of it. I'm just going to observe that both sides are saying to the other side, you're talking nonsense. But to the people on that other side, what they're saying, the nonsense in inverted commas that they are saying is totally reasonable and accurate. So, in terms of trying to understand the position of those people on the other side of the argument, whichever side you're on, rather than, repeating in the British way, is to repeat the argument in a louder voice, but not actually change it. And of course that's not going to change anything because it's not addressing the viewpoint that they have. My grandmother, bless her, she died when she was 99, but one of the things she used to say was, if you don't like the view, climb a different mountain. And I've always taken the view that, anybody's opinion comes from the mountaintop they're standing on, and they sure as hell aren't standing on your mountaintop. So if you want to find out why their view is as it is, you've actually got to get down off your mountain, which is quite a long walk, and you've got to climb their mountain, and that's quite hard work too. So, it takes effort to understand somebody's position, particularly if it's diametrically opposed to your own. But if you climb their mountain and understand their viewpoint and question them about why they think certain things, why are they taking that view, what's behind it, what evidence have they got, in a very open and transparent way, rather than trying to, correct them, then sometimes there are some real insights from that. And you can do it as a thought experiment. And that's where that question comes from. What would have to be true for their position to be reasonable requires you to think about things that you don't believe are true, but then you can question whether they are. Because if, for example, on Brexit, it had to be true that there is no democracy in Europe, that's something that you could question and check whether it's true or not. And for some people, they would argue that there is little or no democracy in Europe. And for others, they would say it's more democratic than any other system. Yeah, you decide where the truth is. I'm not getting into that discussion here, but you see the point.
Yeah, I do. And I felt that, that was a good stopper, because Mavericks are impulsive by nature, especially when they honestly believe that they're right. So cannot possibly understand why anybody else would have a different opinion. So, but certainly for me anyway, just thinking, well, what would have to be true, as I say, as a thought exercise, did stop me at least from jumping in and going, no, you're wrong. I might say
and I think,
afterwards.
yeah. And I think, to put a little twist on the question, which often makes it easier to think about is just to put the words "would they" in. So, what would they know to be true in order for that to be reasonable? And I think that can also help get around this kind of mental block that we all get of, there are two views, mine and the wrong one. And it is difficult because, of course, we're all subject to confirmation bias. And so, we go and look up what we want to find, we find it, and then we say, there you are, there's the proof. We very rarely go and look up the opposite. And that's quite a good habit to get into as well. So, if you wanted to look at, what's the best way to do marketing on Facebook, and you decided that paid advertising was the best thing to do. If you Googled, is paid advertising the best way to market on Facebook, the chances are you would get lots of articles that would say that it was. But, if you were to just turn that question around and also Google, is Facebook advertising the worst way to market on Facebook, you would probably get lots of articles that would agree with that too. So now you have the two opposing views and you can read them and form your own opinion. But searching for the opposite is something we don't tend to do as a rule.
Yeah, I would probably argue that socialised mavericks tend to do it more than most because they don't like to be proven to be wrong. So if you don't see the dissenting view and someone has that dissenting view, then you don't have an opinion on it, or you have your opinion on it too late, and that doesn't make them very comfortable. So on the basis of objectivity, it might be, right, this is exactly what I think. Now let's suppose I'm wrong with this strange idea. Let's go see what other people think. And then that might actually move your opinion and say, actually, yes, I was totally wrong. It is this. But at least it's also for the maverick preparation.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I think the other thing is, of course, this whole question of right and wrong is on a spectrum that has loads of shades of grey as well as the two extremes. And somebody can be right based on the information that they have and change their opinion and to be right based on the new information that they have. That doesn't mean they were wrong before. They were just short of information. And
I like that. I use that as a phrase. You're not wrong. You just don't have all the information.
Yeah. But I think sometimes in terms of influencing people and shifting opinion and encouraging people to shift their opinion and aligning people behind a particular view, taking the views of, I'm going to show you that you were wrong so that you can agree with me, tends to lock people into a defensive mode where it's much harder to shift them. Whereas, that's very interesting. Can we explore the information that we both have and see what that tells us both about what we need to agree on, and not judging the other position as right or wrong, but judging it as informed more or less. And of course, in the process of exploring the information that you both have, you also get more information, so your own opinion might shift. And that was one of the key lessons that I learned with the big project teams, was that to get everybody aligned behind the goal of the project, everybody had to change. Everybody.
Yeah, and 70 people, that's one hell of a team.
Project team. It was good. Yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun. We delivered some good stuff, and we had a few big parties along the way. But mostly it was about having fun. The biggest single thing I think that did that made a difference was that we got out and we walked around. If there was an issue, rather than going into a closed room with a closed door and trying to batter each other until we got to a solution, I would take people outside and get rid of the boundaries and have them see a horizon and ask them what was on the horizon, what was coming, and what was, and let them have the space to think. And walking around the park next door, we would usually get a resolution to a big issue in 20 minutes or half an hour, when if we'd gone into a meeting room, it would have taken all day and we wouldn't have solved anything.
See, that in itself is quite a maverick approach, isn't it? Because especially in those days, old insurance companies, old banks with old methods of thinking and seniority and all that hierarchy, to say, right, we're going to leave the office and go for a walk, they must have thought you were crazy.
Yeah, they did. But I didn't care about that. I didn't care at all. Yeah, we broke a few rules, but who cares? It got the job done.
Spoken like a good maverick. I think that's a great place to stop. So, William, would you come back again?
I'd be delighted to.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox Podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with William as much as I enjoyed having it. If you would like to learn more about Mavericks and leadership, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, apply to join the Maverick Paradox exclusive Facebook group, and my website is maverickparadox.com. Find out how willful independence can ultimately change all our futures. Thanks again, and see you soon.